Hey there, what I wanted to do at the very start is in this video give you a complete overview of everything that we're going to be going through the teaching process. I think this is really important from your side, because if you can understand exactly the goal of this training and exactly what is involved in it, then from the very start you'll have a clear understanding of why we're going through everything the way we are as we progress through the lessons. And if you know from the very start, then there's going to be no kind of hidden surprises as we go along. So having said that, the first thing that we have to assume, and this is going to be the whole kind of premise of what the teaching series is about, is that the whole experience we're having is much like a dream. Now, I appreciate from somebody from the West that this for me seemed a million miles away 15 years ago. But because of the seriousness of the feelings of guilt I was having, that I suppose I was open to hear a different interpretation of the experience I was having. However, what I needed was a very specific framework to follow to actually then have the faith and do the practices that I was encouraged to do to heal the mind with the perspective that it's all just a dream. And that's what this whole teaching series is about, is going through step by step and the nitty-gritty details of everything that that I've been taught, that spoke about why the dream started, why it manifests the way it does, why we have the feelings we have, why everything is ultimately destined to fail, and also beyond that, how to actually undo it, which is the most important thing. So that's what I needed back then, and I understand that a lot of people, it's no good just saying to somebody, well, it's just a dream, carry on. We need a very specific teaching framework for us to actually be able to bring all of this to our awareness. So we could think of that as the kind of course objective, and that is to raise everything that's been pushed out of our awareness and to the unconscious mind, slowly back up into our awareness, so that we can process it and start the journey of going through that unconscious mind to get beyond it, to being the dreamer of the dreams, so to speak. And that's what this whiteboard in a very high level will detail, which we'll go through now. But having said that, just remember that we're going to go through all of this in a nitty-gritty detail. For the purposes of today's video, all we really want to do is have an overview of what we'll be going through, so that you understand why when we get into the lessons we are going through them the way we are, and also the direction we're heading and why we're actually learning this stuff. So as I said, there's going to be a lot of different concepts that I'll be drawing out, but just know that each one of them is actually going to be very specifically described in the subsequent videos. So at the very start, what we can say is that there is this kind of state called Satchitananda. And Satchitananda is simply the state of being eternal, being unchanging, and being self-sustaining. So it's called a lot of different things throughout the ages, such as nirvana or the kingdom of heaven or spirit. But just know that this is the kind of starting point which is also designated as reality. And in dreams, we could actually call this the awake state. And this is all that is essentially real. So then we've got to start to explain, well, if that's all that's real and we're experiencing ourselves down in time and space, well, how did that come about? So what we can then say is we've got these red lines, and what we can say is that this Satchitananda, this eternal state, seems to have this power to veil itself, to hide itself from its own awareness. And as I mentioned, that is what these red lines are, that we can put these veils of forgetfulness over that awareness, so to speak, and we can fall into a dream. And when we fall into a dream, we split into three parts. There's the part that we become identified with, and that's designated by the blue dot, and that is known as the dreamer as we carry on. So the dreamer's role then is simply to either decide to, follow its dreams and make its dreams a reality, or it's to wake up back to reality. That's really the responsibility of the dreamer. He's always in control of his experience because he always gets to decide what he wants to experience through the mechanism of choice. So the things he's got to choose between is what I've just named Shiva here. And Shiva is simply the memory of who the dreamer is beyond its dream, beyond this first veil, who it is in the awake state, which is Satchitananda. So that's all Shiva's only ever going to signify within the dream, within the sleeping mind. And also what we have is this Maya. So Maya could be thought of, the voice for individuality. It's that voice that says, well, you can go off and have your life apart from life, that you have your own individual sense of life. And also at this stage, what we have is we've got the dreamer looking back to his awake state. And of course, he's not going to look back to the awake state as himself because he has become this new entity. So he's not going to think he's been birthed by himself. So then the concept that the awake state could be thought of as his father. And the father, which is the concept that we're using through this series, could be named Brahman. So he looks back up to the awake state and he will think, well, that is my father. So what obviously happens, because we are, in time and space, is that the dreamer decides to go off and listen to Maya. So what then happens is that another veil of forgetfulness, and we'll go through this idea of denial and repression, goes over the dreamer. So now what happens is that he has denied and repressed the awareness of this memory, Shiva, and also who he is, the dreamer, into, out of awareness, so to speak. So now he's down with Maya, and now he's in complete, Maya's in complete control of what the experience for the dreamer will be. Now I've got this green box, and this designates essentially the unconscious mind. There's some heavy hitting terms here, but just know, because it's all happening in a dream, that these are actually all just made up concepts. But we also have to be aware that the world of time and space isn't a very nice place. So we have to start to appreciate, well, maybe the stuff in the mind, if we understand that a dream is simply the projection of thoughts, and that those thoughts are stored in the unconscious mind, then we can appreciate then the stuff that is stored in the unconscious mind might not be so good. And that's all these concepts that Maya has put in there. And we won't go through them in this video, because that's what the training is for, and this video would go on for too long. But just know that this is all done for the purposes of driving the dreamer as far away from this point of power as he can get. So obviously Maya, once the dreamer has chosen her, doesn't want the dreamer to choose against her reality, because that would mean that it would just dissolve, because it is just a dream, and the dreamer would wake back up to his reality. So all of this is simply done to drive the dreamer far away from this point of power, out into time and space, being identified with a body. So there's 4 different veils that the dreamer will go through, and we'll be going through them in turn in the series. But essentially what's going to happen is he's going to end up down in time and space, identified as a body, with this last veil going over this unconscious mind. So now what's going to happen is that the dreamer is now going to go from his point of power up here down into be a body with no awareness of how he even got there. He's just going to walk onto a stage, being completely oblivious that everything is happening is simply happening, much like in a movie, that if you could think that a character is on the screen, and everything the character is doing is simply being driven by the film that's in the projector's box. In much the same way, in time and space, all the characters on the stage are now, because of this dynamic of denial and repression, just seem to be kind of operating in this environment where it's in control of its own bodily function, but the rest of the world and all the other characters have nothing to do with him. And that's what we're going to be detailing as we go through is all the different ways that the character tries to deal with what's in here. And what's in here is essentially his loss of innocence. So his innocence could be thought of as natural state, and in here it's kind of manipulated that it's been lost, and then once he's projected out here, he feels that sense of loss, and then Maya, through her instructions, will encourage the dreamer, now identified with the body, to be able to go out into the dream and actually replace his own sense of identity or reality in a dream as a body, which is all for Maya's purposes, obviously, to keep the dreamer completely unaware of who he is and to keep looking outside of himself. And if Maya can encourage the dreamer to do that, then of course the dreamer is never going to go on the journey back through the unconscious mind, get to the other end of the other side of the unconscious mind, and choose to wake up back to who he really is in reality. So that's the other part. So once we've completely, explained the dream and how it came about and how it operates and the consequences for the dreamer associated with the body, then what we're going to do is we're going to go through the process of the return and how to actually do that. That Shiva will become a key figure in this as a guide to help him through the unconscious mind, to get through all of these different kind of, we could think of it, the landmines that Maya's put in to stop his return, and until Shiva's work is done and the dreamer's got back to that perspective, so that then he's happy to open his eyes, because none of this can be seen as a journey of sacrifice. That once the dreamer gets back up here and notices everything is an illusion, then he knows, well, nothing was ever asked of me to be given up, because everything I was asked to give up was just an illusion. And therefore, that's the only time when the dreamer will be happy to open his eyes, when he recognizes that he's not going to lose anything and only gain. So that's the objective of all the different lessons that we'll be going through. So as I mentioned, take it slow. This is probably quite radical from somebody who might be coming to it brand new. But these are all the lessons I mentioned that has taken my mind to be completely filled of guilt, in a peaceful state, which seemed to be completely beyond any hope 15 years ago for my mind. So I can understand the power of this teaching, but I can also understand the resistance to learning it as well, because I could understand that my state got so bad simply because I was so resistant to hearing this type of information. So be gentle on yourself as you go through, take it slowly, ask questions, and just know that once we see what is really happening down here in time and space, it's that will be the motivation that will help us go on the journey home, so to speak. That we have to really get a clear grasp of what's been held out for us here at Maya's Dream before we are willing to let it go and go on the journey home. So with that, I'll sign off and I'll see you in the first lesson, What is Reality?